Good morning, everybody. Thanks for showing up today. We're going to cover today defining and creating your sales process within Dynamics CRM. So my name is Mitch Milam. I think you all should know that by now. I'm a Dynamics CRM architect and independent consultant. I'm also a 10-time Dynamics CRM MVP. You can contact me at mitch@xrmcoaches.com, on my main blog, which is infinite-x.net, and of course on Twitter at Mitch Milam. So again, thanks for showing up today. A little bit of housekeeping here. We're going to have a discussion / quick Q&A session at the end. So what I'd like you to do is, if you have anything, you can either type it into the question box as always, or you can just raise your hand, which you do on the little panel on the little B there, and you can raise your hand, and I'll be able to see you there, and I can open your mic up. Okay, my training roadmap for this year. So continue to do webinars. So anytime that you want to see what webinars we have going, go out to xrmcoaches.com/webinars. Knowledge Bits is a information delivery service that I have that will email you one tip a day for somewhere between 5 and 20 days, depending on the topic. Also has some free learning plans out there to help you learn stuff. Also, I'm working on some practice tests. I'm almost finished with some on-demand training for developers and some instructor-led training, of course. And then I've got the books coming out here very shortly. I also have a developer class coming up in June. So if you didn't see that, then drop me a line if you're interested in something like that. Okay, so here's what we're covering today. So we're going to go through the basics of sales processes. Talk about how to create a great sales process and working within the Dynamics CRM system to enable that process, and then find out a couple of tips and tricks that might help along the way. And again, at the end, if you see anything that I missed or you have some comments to make, then I'm absolutely great to hear that. So here we go. So first caveat to all of this, I have to make sure that your mileage may vary. So what you experience in your operation at your company is going to be different than what everybody else sees at their company. So take what you learned today, share what you can. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work, then you just need to find your path. So rule number 1, technology absolutely does not fix process issues. So what we're going to talk about at the beginning here is actually defining your process and then applying some technology behind that. If you apply technology to a broken process, what that really gives you is a really efficient broken process. So the thing to really keep in mind is you've got to get your processes down before you attempt any kind of automation. Okay, and that doesn't matter if it's workflows in CRM or if it's anything to do with how you're setting up your data or your processes or anything like that. You've got to get the process down first. So that's the most important thing. The next important thing is make sure that your processes fit the people, not the people fit the process. What happens if you do the latter is you end up with a lot of angst, quite honestly. People don't like being shoved into a box. So you need to make sure that the process works for the people, and then you apply that. Okay, if you do it the opposite way, I've actually worked at companies where they made us fit the process because that's the process they had. And it was not very efficient, and the people who designed it weren't actually the people who did the job, so they had no idea what we were doing. So, but they made us do it the way that they said because that was the way it worked. Okay, so keep that in mind. So a couple things here. So here you have 2 different strategies on the wall. Okay, this is actually out of my office. One on the left is basically a bunch of sticky notes that have writing on them, and the one in the middle is basically not very well organized and stuff. And Rob, yes, that case of bourbon there in the corner is for medicinal purposes only. This is how a lot of people's processes seem to work. Okay, I've been part of processes like this. I work with customers all over the world that have processes like this, and as you can see, that's not exactly efficient. This is my daughter, Audrey. She's 3. She is the author of that you just saw. This is my interpretation of her sales process. So you have the qualify down in the left-hand corner in pink. Then you have the develop there in blue in the middle. Proposal is kind of an afterthought up at the top. And then closing is right in the middle. Okay, so again, this is my interpretation. I'll have to ask her to see what she actually meant by all that. it's much better to have something like this. Now, this is actually my website redesign, but it happened to be on the wall, so that's what it did. So one of the things that you can do when you define your processes is just put it all out on paper. So I prefer to, what I say, think big. So I prefer to draw things out like this on a whiteboard because it allows you to take a step back physically from your work and take a look at it from literally a 10-foot view. It gives you a different perspective than if it's on a piece of paper. That's just the way I work, but I found a lot of people actually work better that way than putting it on a piece of paper. So does anybody know who this guy is, Buckminster Fuller? Anybody? Near to us? So he is the guy who created the geodesic dome, amongst other things. He also created a thing called a buckyball. This is actually the tenant that I do all of my work under. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's development, if it's designing something, if I have a woodworking hobby, if it's complicated, what I have found is not right. And it's very hard to get in a mindset that is not like this for me. Okay, so what happens is, as he says, if you get to the end and it's complicated, it's probably wrong. So one of the things that I really like about this statement is it totally fits the way that I work. Okay, so not everybody follows this, of course, but the idea here is when you get to the end of the process, if the process is pretty or the process is simply or is simple, or you can explain it again to your 10-year-old and have them understand it, then it's probably correct. If it's too complicated, then basically, I'm not going to say it's wrong, but it can lead to errors. So let's talk about creating a great sales process. The first thing that you have to do is get agreement, okay? If you get into a discussion with any company, if you have more than one or two people or more than one or two groups of people, what you will find is you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways of doing the same thing. So the absolute first thing that you have to do is get on agreement on what you're going to do. Okay, that sounds really simple. It is going to be the most difficult thing that you're ever doing this whole process. If you can't get past this phase, then I would just keep going and doing what you're doing. Okay, that's just it. If nobody can agree on what the process is actually going to be, then you're lost pretty much. Okay, so to keep that in mind. Sponsorship. The process absolutely must come from the top. No matter how passionate you are as a salesperson or a sales manager or whatever, if you do not have buy-in from an executive of a high level, you're not going to succeed. That's just the way it is. Okay? Execution. Once you have your plan, you must follow your plan. Everyone must follow the plan. If you do not follow the plan, it is not a plan. Follow through. We really need to follow through. We really need PowerPoint to not crash on me every time I do a webinar, but that's beside the point. Sorry about that. Get there quickly. Okay, so follow through. So like execution, it's very important that you actually follow through with your work. So you do the work and then you check to make sure the work was done the way that you said it was going to be done. Okay, so let's review this. Agreement, sponsorship, execution, and follow through. If you want to drop off the webinar right now, you can. That's all you really need. Okay, if you can do these 4 things in that specific order, then you're ahead of the game. Okay. So let's talk about some CRM specific stuff. Oops. So we have 4 basic entities within CRM that handle what I call the sales process. Now there's some ancillary entities to go with it, but these are the big ones, of course. So we have a lead, which is a contact at a company that we may or may not be doing business with. We have an account, which is a company, a contact, which is a person, and an opportunity, which represents a possible dollar amount that we might get from one or more of those people. So what is a lead? Well, this is kind of a religious discussion, quite honestly. A lead to me is somebody I do not know. Okay, now again, going back to your mileage may vary. Everybody's going to handle this different, so let me just say what I have to say, and then we can talk about it here in a little bit. A lead is somebody I don't know. I bought a bunch of leads from, say, USA Data, and I import them in the CRM. Okay, those are leads. I have no idea who these people are. I've got emails, maybe. I've got their first name, their last name, possibly a phone number. I have zero relationship with them. To me, that's a lead. If somebody is dropping off their business card at a networking event, or I have a booth at Convergence or Ignite or Envision or whatever it might be, that's a higher level of relationship than somebody who's just a name on a list. Okay, to me anyway. So your version of lead has to kind of be agreed upon. So the reason it has to be agreed upon is going to be depending on where you start the person within CRM within your process. So here is a lead. You have a topic, their name, job title, email, and the company they're at, and the address and website. Just basic stuff. This is just a stock CRM 2016 organization here. Okay, and of course you can customize this to your heart's content. So the idea here is I have a person that I work with, or I want to work with, or have the name, and I may or may not have a company. And then what you do is you work with it within the framework of the lead to develop that person into someone that's actually going to buy something from you. That's the idea. There is a business process flow that is built into CRM, ships with a product that looks like this. So they have 4 stages: a qualify, a develop, a propose, and a close. So you qualify the person, you develop that relationship, you propose something, and then you close them out as either won or lost. Lost means that whatever it was didn't work and they're falling off the list, and they will basically be disabled as a record within CRM. Closing is won is called qualifying, and what that will do is actually move them into the other entities within the system, the account, the contact, and the opportunity. This is the process for the lead conversion. So we take the lead. When you click with 2016, now this will vary depending on your version of CRM. With 2011 and before, quite honestly, it will pop a box up and it will ask you what you would like to create: a contact, a lead, and/or an opportunity. With 2013 and above, it will just go and create those entities by themselves. So it creates an account. It takes the account information from the lead, creates the account. It creates a contact based on the contact information, and then it will set the primary contact for the account to be the contact it just created. And then finally, it will actually create an opportunity based on some of the information that was entered on the lead itself. Okay. So what is an opportunity? Well, an opportunity is the possibility and a revenue amount of you making money from someone. That's what an opportunity is in most cases. Okay, your company may differ with this. So some people don't track opportunities at all. That's not how their business is structured. And if they don't track opportunities, they don't have the ability to do some of the other metrics that go with it. We'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to the sales pipeline. Oops. This is what an opportunity looks like. So we have a topic, we have a contact and an account, purchase time frame, budget amount, and then we have again a sales process at the top that allows us to clearly state where we are within this process. You'll notice that this is actually at a develop stage. If I moved backward to the qualify stage, what that will actually do is it will open the lead that this came from. That's how this was created. So the qualify step of this specific business process flow is actually the qualification of a lead. Okay, there's actually 2 that ship with CRM 2016, a standard one and one that came from the lead. So if I actually click the previous stage arrow, it will actually open up the lead because that's where it came from. Okay, and again, all of these business process flows are what you're actually going to be creating if it fits your business. You don't have to use a business process flow, but it does help people quickly see where you are within the process. So let's talk about a sales pipeline. So I'm sure everyone has seen a graph like this. This is called a funnel chart. And what it's doing, it is giving us a very quick overview of our sales pipeline and the stage that each opportunity is in. So I created a new opportunity from scratch that has a estimated revenue of 10,000. So I don't have a stage associated with it, so it's blank. But then I have 25,000 possible revenue in the qualify stage, 55,000 in development, and 36,000 in proposal. Okay, so this is how management looks at your sales activity or your sales activity to figure out where we are within the sales process and what the possible revenue numbers are. All of these things can be tied into goals and metrics. So CRM has a system for measuring sales based on a couple things. So you can either have a metric created that will check the amount or a count of items. So I want to sell $300,000 of widget A, or I need to sell 50,000 widgets, one of the two, and you can define that. So you can have a standard goal, as you see, as a checkbox to define a stretch target, and then the Rollup Fields, those are actually what is used to calculate where you are within that process. So as you can see, we've got a calculation to figure out what we actually won and what we are possibly winning. And this ties into what they call a goal. So the goal metric defines what you're measuring, and then the goal defines how exactly you're measuring it. Okay, so the target is a money, and what we're doing is we want $300,000 for the fiscal period Q1 of fiscal year 2013. Okay, and again, this is all modified or modifiable by you, so you set all this stuff up. Okay. The actuals are read-only because they're calculated automatically behind the scenes. So at this point, we are way behind the curve because, well, one, it's 3 years ago, but two, there's no actual money and there's no in-progress money. So we've got to sell $300,000 in 3 months. Okay. So let's go back to the tools that we use here. We create business process flows to tie the lead and the opportunity together, for one, but it also helps us define our process so it's clearly visible to everyone about where things are. The business process flows control the stage, it's linked together, and that is reported into the sales pipeline, and then the same numbers can be applied to goals. So here's a couple tips and tricks. There's a very important field on both the contact and the entity called the relationship type. On the account, it's populated. I think on contact, it may not be populated, but the idea here is you define the type of customer. So earlier I said when we were talking about leads, about how some people don't use leads. They start out at a higher level of relationship. So what a lot of companies do, myself included, is I don't use leads in any way. I start everybody off as a contact. I actually don't keep track of accounts, quite honestly, but that's just me. But what I do is I have a stage here. It's either a customer or a prospect or a lead. Okay. And then what I do is I create an account or a contact, depending on how the situation is, and then I apply the relationship type. And then at some point, should they ever buy something, they would go from a prospect to a customer. And you can automate that, of course. Starting, I think, in 2015, I'm not sure if it was in 2013 or not, I found these two fields accidentally one day when I was just modifying the account form. These are calculated fields, and what they are doing is they're actually rolling up for an account the open opportunities and the estimated revenue for those opportunities. So they're calculated, so they're updated every 24 hours, or you can just click the refresh button and it will calculate it immediately. But these are built in. This gives you a really quick overview of your accounts, so you can see what is, what's in the pipeline just at a high level number. Okay, so I've got one deal worth possibly $10,000. Okay, then you can put these on views, and then you can have a quick view. So it's not a graph, but it's just a view, and then you can just see what's going on with that. Other things that I've done for customers is I've created calculated fields to track the number of phone calls, the number of appointments, and this is done with just your standard calculated field or roll-up field, and it just counts the number of phone calls that you have on a a contact or an account. And what we use that for is some metrics to figure out what did it take to actually turn that person into a customer. And so what was that number when we finally converted them from a prospect into a customer? Okay, so I know it's kind of quick, very high level view of stuff. What have you guys done? What questions do you have? And what have you found that is successful in your business? Rob, I'm going to unmute you, okay? Okay, Rob, you're up.
Good morning, sir.
How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Question on that roll up the calculated fields, like for the phone calls and the appointments.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that on an account record, will it do? Because we typically will document the phone calls and the appointments to the person that we're meeting with, and as you know, it will roll up to show the related records
Yes.
to the account record. Will it do that? Count the number of phone calls from the child records up to the parent?
You know, I think it will. Where am I? Let's go check real quick about that. I think there is an option when you create the field to ask if it should roll up the child records.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I didn't have this open.
That's all right.
Account.
And you let me know if you need any help with that bourbon.
I'll do it.
Field type roll. Okay, cool.
Let's see. I think that's it. Actually, I could have just done that. Hang on. Not exactly a speed demon this week.
Yeah. Must be Friday.
Okay. So what we'll do, let's go to accounts. And look at VentureWorks. Open up Nancy. And create a phone call. Okay, that's that. Go back to AdventureWorks, refresh our field. Come on, you can do it. Maybe not. I thought it worked like that.
Yeah,
Maybe not, Rob.
because the regarding isn't
The regarding is
actually the
not for the
account.
account. So yeah, so I think if I would have set the regarding, then it would have done that. Yeah, that's good. That's a good
All right.
question. Okay, thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll throw one other thing out there
Yeah.
related to what you were talking about. We had a challenge with the leads concept in CRM because you can't link leads together. You know, let's say you have 2 or 10 people at the same company.
Right.
And so what we decided to just not use that entity, and instead, it may seem overkill, but we decided to use opportunities, but we created a stage 0, and that kind of represents the lead. And that way we're able to have an account and then link all of the people that the names that we've acquired. We don't know them yet, but we can tell the outreach to all of those people because of the roll-up to the account. And then if we qualify, what you would typically do, qualify a lead, the opportunity goes into a stage 1. And if it's disqualified, it's just we close it as lost, but with a special stage, so it never shows up actually on the win-loss report. So salespeople don't get dinged for having their win-loss percentage for things which aren't even qualified.
Gotcha.
Just throw that out there.
That's interesting. I have another partner that I work with in Florida, and what they are doing is they created a relationship between lead and contact, and then they have a subgrid just like this over here on the lead.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then when the lead is qualified, there's a plugin that they wrote that just copies the contacts that were associated with the lead and reassociates them with the account that was created. So that's another way to do it. I personally, like I said, I don't use leads. What's funny, Rob, is we found a bug for one of your customers years ago where people didn't use the leads, so they turned the lead off, and Outlook was crashing when it tried to add an email to CRM because it couldn't get to the user didn't have access to the lead entity.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It was I can't remember who it was something Larry worked on, but yeah. So what we had to do is we had to give them read access, but then we had to modify the sitemap and put a privilege on the lead sitemap entry to where the privilege had to be right, and if they didn't have right, it wouldn't show up on the user interface. So that prevented the lead from showing up to the users, and then it also allowed the Outlook to search the lead entity. Now they fixed that since then. But when I think it was probably 2011. I think it's 2011 for us. It's been just a long time ago.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, cool. Hey, thank you very much.
Yep, thanks, Rob. Okay, Pierre says, question, could one install the lead progress bar on the contact? I don't see why not. I don't think we have any in the CRM here. Let's go find out real quick. I've never tried it, but it's always a first time. Actually, that's not where to do it. It is a process, technically. Process. Flow. Contact. Oops. Activate. There you go. So yes. So pretty much there's a list of to my knowledge, what happens with the business process flows is any of the pardon me, any of the primary entities, and there's like a list of like 13 or 17 that you saw in that list there, you can create one on. So basically, if it shows up in the list, you can create one and you can monitor however you want. Okay, and then what you might now the problem is there's nothing to associate this with a piece of data. I don't think, or maybe a stage ID inside. Oh, I'm sorry, there will be a stage ID. So yeah, so you can do reporting stuff off this. That's it. Sumit asks, does calculated field work with on-premise? Yes, calculated fields work everywhere. So everything that you're seeing works in on-premises and online. Let's see, Annie says, during this part of the discussion, I'd like to know how you manage converting a lead to opportunity regarding notes. So here's the deal. So this is another kind of religious discussion. Don't ever use notes. Very simple. Okay. And the reason is because they don't transfer anywhere. Okay. So what happens is most people put in notes, and what they'll do is say it called. Okay. Now you see that note right there? You know what that was? That was a phone call. Write a phone call. Don't write a note. Okay. Sorry, that's a bit of a stickler for me. Activities transfer whenever you modify them. I think they transfer over, or if not, you can make them transfer over. Notes are very difficult to deal with internally, programmatically. So you can write a plugin to transfer stuff between things, but notes are just kind of a pain. So I would never use notes, quite honestly. Let's see. Rollup, I was wondering. Let's see if there's this one here. Wondering if you had somehow gotten a calculated field to add data from child records. Munir, that's what that was doing. When you select that hierarchy field at the very top of the business, the Rollup field, what that says is I want to go into the child records and do that. So that's what was happening. The reason that our example fails is because I didn't set the regarding to the account. I only set it to the contact. So you might have to play around with that. Okay. Greg says he can testify. I'm assuming he's talking about the don't use notes. Yeah. And again, the biggest thing with notes is again they're very difficult to deal with. It's hard to report on. They don't transfer between things, and I just consider it a bad practice. But that's just me. Realistically, everything that you do with a customer should be an activity. You made a phone call, you made an appointment, you sent an email. Those are all activities. Those things can roll up to the parent account. You can do counts on them. You can do reporting on them. They have all this feature functionality built into the system. Use notes, it's stuck in a hole, and you'll never get it out. Okay, so sorry. Let's see, Pierre says, could CRM calculate ratios between two calculated fields? What do you mean by ratio? You mean like a percentage of one field versus the other? I don't know if you can. The calculation engine is actually pretty sophisticated. It might. If not, what I would do is you can get a dividing two numbers. Yeah, I think you can. Yes, I know you can definitely divide one number by another number. You can. Full math operations was reported, so yes, you should be able to do that. Yes, sir. Rob says, do I leave notes accessible for attachments? Another partially religious discussion. Yes, in most cases, but remember that attachments are stored inside the CRM database. If you're in CRM Online, that takes up data space. What you can try to do, if it works for your organization, is use SharePoint to store the documents instead of notes. MS CRM Add-ons has a product that the Document Core Pack that will actually help you move your documents and store the documents inside SharePoint instead of with notes. So that's a possibility there. There's also, I think, some free stuff out there that you can probably dig around and find as well. Greg says making fields require within the business process flow. No, that's the biggest thing that I really don't like about the business process flow. This is all show, realistically. There's no thing that says, I need you to complete this before you move on. It just needs a value. There's no really checking on what the value is and stuff like that. So you can make it required, but you could put anything in there. It doesn't matter. So it to me it's not 100%. It doesn't prevent or say I need to some of the things like say we have an option set and I only want to move to the next stage if the option set is set to a specific value. You can't do that. It checks any value. So that's a kind of a side effect of that kind of bothers me. But it's something that may be fixed one day. We'll hope. We can always hope. Okay. Sonia asked, do you have any ideas about customizing phone calls? The out-of-box activity grid uh, probably said doesn't allow for enough information entered for the user reporting. The problem with activities is there's actually two different entities in play here, minimum. Okay, so if you look here, there's a thing called an activity. The technical name is activity pointer. What this is a reference entity that points to all of the other activities. Most of the things within this entity cannot be modified. Okay, so what happens is if you have a custom field that you would like on every activity type, you have to create that yourself. So if you have, I can't remember, I've done this before, but if I had a custom field, I literally had to go into the account, the phone call, the appointment, email, fax, whatever it might be, and make a modification there. So basically, the way that you know if you can modify stuff is if you see a save button here. Okay? If you do not have a save button, that means that you cannot change this list. Okay? And like I said, to my knowledge, unless they've changed something, and they do it all the time now, don't forget that they regularly go and add stuff to CRM or change the functionality, and they don't tell anybody. You just stumble across it. So that's why George and them created the CRM tip thing. So see on activity, there's no new button. That's another way you can tell. So basically, anytime you're customizing CRM, if you have a new button, that means you can add fields, of course. If you don't have a new button, it means you can't. If you open a view and it only has a save as button, that means you cannot customize that view. You can create another one. The grids that are part of the quote order invoice system are exactly like that. So you can create a new view and then you can select that, but you can't actually change the one that they use because it's very specific to that stuff. Rob asked about the email. So MSCRM add-ons it's a document core pack. Has the SharePoint connection, if I'm not mistaken. Ooh, Pierre asked about stage gating. Pierre, what does that mean? Can I unmute you? Can you tell us? Can you talk? Let me unmute you. Sorry. Okay, Pierre, you're unmuted.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Mitch?
Yeah, great.
Let me put my headset on.
Okay.
Hey, yeah, I was told in the leads entity one could actually lock down a stage until a piece of data was entered or the right data, and it would lock you down and forbid you to go to the next stage in the process without having that data in there.
That's a possibility. See this required field right here, or just checkbox? If you check that, they can't move to the next stage until it's populated.
Right, but they could always enter that. They could deliberately, check off that box and enter whatever data they want, and that would not forbid them from moving
Absolutely.
on.
That is the problem I have. That's what I was mentioning. That's the problem I have with BPFs is they don't do any checking. All they do is, did you fill something out? Not that is it the correct thing. It's really hairy with checkboxes or two option fields because they default to having a value in there always. So it doesn't check to see if it's yes or not. It has a value. So you can set it to where the value is null, but it can also be set to, if you set it to no, well, no is actually a completion of that value. So technically the field's been filled out, even though the user made no change.
Got it. Okay, so we're talking about it's the ethical. Yeah, are you ethical or not? Are you doing what you're supposed to do or whatever? Okay.
Yeah. Now you can write some JavaScript. So there is JavaScript available when you do stuff like what I've done before. If I go back to the opportunity, one of the things that I customize quite frequently, quite honestly, is the probability fields. Okay, so I mean, are they even listed here anymore? No, they're not even on there. So there is a probability and a stage. The sales stage is populated automatically, but there's a probability, and it's a number. Okay, but it can be any number. Well, people don't report very well off any number. So what you do is you create an option set that lists your specific sales stages. So, if you follow the solution selling process like Microsoft does, you have 10 to 100%. 10 being you have their name, 100% means they bought something. Okay. And so what you want in order to report on things, you have to take a consistent data. So what you would do is you would actually populate you add a custom field. This option set has the 10 things listed, or the 5 or 6 stages, whatever it is. And then I use JavaScript or a plugin behind the scene, depending on how you want to do it, that automatically takes that value and then sticks it into the original probability field, because that probability field is actually used throughout the system. Okay, so
got it.
Okay, but what I've done with that is that, and the stage is similar to that. It's just, the stage is a text field. Okay, and again, you have to have consistent data to report consistently, right? So what happens is you can actually tie into the moving of these stages here. Now, clicking that is not moving. As you see, the little flag there doesn't change. But if I go back a stage, that changes. You can tie into that event using JavaScript. So what I did is I tied into this event. It's like a stage changing or something like that, and then populated the custom stage I had based on what this value was, and that way they're always in sync.
Right.
Okay.
For much better. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now here, while I'm talking about this, I wrote a blog article about this about a month ago. I found accidentally that you can modify a closed opportunity. It is the craziest thing in the world. I have no idea how or why, but you can actually edit a closed opportunity without reopening it.
Well, so that could be dangerous. Yeah,
that could be very dangerous. Now, it worked out in our favor, because what happened is we put this process that I just described to you in place, but all of the older opportunities that were closed need to be updated. And because what they were doing, they were going through a data cleansing process. So what we did is actually created a small little .NET application that opened it up that basically pulled in all the things and then set the fields properly. Because what happened is, if they went to, say, the proposed stage, that fired off a piece of data that screwed the reports up. Okay, because they were tracking it when it got to that stage. They were tracking that, and we couldn't do it manually, because what happened is, as soon as it hit that stage there, it would insert a piece of false data into the report, and they couldn't handle that. So we were actually able to open it up. Actually, not even open it up. I just literally retrieved the record, updated like 4 or 5 fields, and then saved it. And it's programmatically. They only had say 400 of these things. It wasn't a huge deal, but it worked just fine.
Yeah. That's probably a good topic to throw in the suggestion box for a 2018 CRM, right?
Well, I'm kind of afraid to, quite honestly, because it turns out it's very useful. Now, like you said, it can cause problems, but it's very useful. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I appreciate you.
Sure. Thanks. Okay. What did we say? Rick asked why it's not. There is a save right there. You have to make a data change. So there you go. Let's see. Tavi says, our lead collection workflows use a service object for data validation. We need to pre-auto load data that will affect data and entities related to the leads workflow model. Should use plugins that kind of work in processing. Yeah, anytime you do really heavy work, you can do JavaScript to a lot of this stuff, but writing a plugin a lot of times is actually easier on the system, because one, it happens behind the scenes, with or without user involvement. When you have a piece of JavaScript, the user has to physically open up the record. But if you do a plugin, a lot of times I've actually This is sound kind of odd, but what I'll do is I'll literally write a workflow that, say, goes into the description field and adds a space to it. And then I will run that workflow against all of the records that I want it to. And what it does when that record is updated, the plugin fires. Okay, so that's a way of kind of getting a plugin to fire, because plugins only fire when things are done physically. So that's what I'll do with that. Let's see, what else? That's about it. See, any hands up? Okay. So, any questions on anything we covered today? Anything anybody want to share? See any hands going up? Oops, let me just close that. Okay. Well, it has been great as always. Keep an eye out. I'll have this up on YouTube by the end of the day probably, and I'll probably get an email out with the link later today or first thing in the morning. Okay. Well, I really appreciate everybody stopping by today, and I'll catch you next week when we're doing what we're doing next week. JavaScript, no. Next week we're doing Interactive Server Hub next week, I think. Okay. Thanks, guys.